Hello, friends. A heartfelt welcome to the Global Life Stories channel. Once upon a time, there was a king who was incredibly cruel and tyrannical. He treated his people terribly. The neighboring king, who was a very kind and just ruler, would constantly receive complaints about this cruel king's actions. So one day, the kind king ordered his commander-in-chief, "Take our bravest warriors, conquer that tyrant's kingdom, and bring him back in chains." What happens next is absolutely fascinating. So let's find out what happens next. The name of this story is Rice and Lentils.
When faced with a massive problem or a glaring injustice, the natural human instinct is to strike at the absolute core. We want to identify the heart of the issue and tear it down immediately. When an injustice is severe enough, the pressure to act feels like a physical weight. In that state, it seems as though a single, decisive blow is the only logical response. This was the exact tension felt by two neighboring kingdoms. One was ruled by a dictator who terrorized his citizens, hoarded the nation's wealth, and punished even the smallest mistakes with absolute malice. Across the border lived a kind king who treated his own people with genuine care. Hearing the constant reports of cruelty from the neighboring land, he could no longer stand by and watch. His compassion forced his hand. The kind king ordered an immediate, massive response. He deployed his greatest general and a huge army, commanding them to march across the border, seize the dictator's palace, and end the suffering in one swift motion. The general's orders were absolute: bypass the countryside, ignore the small towns, and march a straight line to the palace gates. In the heat of the moment, speed looked like the only path to victory. Confident in his superior numbers, the general made his choice. He drove his thousands of troops straight toward the dictator's central palace, leaving the entire outer perimeter of the country behind him. Anticipating a direct strike, the dictator deliberately emptied his center, moving his main military forces to the edges. As the general's army reached the palace, the trap snapped shut. Perimeter troops collapsed inward, attacking the invading army from behind. The invading army was decimated. After heavy casualties, the surviving troops broke formation and fled. The general barely escaped with his life, retreating far into the wilderness to hide. Overwhelming force serves no purpose when it is isolated in the center. If a structure surrounds you, brute strength alone cannot save you from the squeeze. Stripped of his army and his pride, the general found refuge in a quiet peasant hut, far away from the front lines. The hut belonged to a mother and her 10-year-old son. As the general sat in the shadows, he watched the mother serve her hungry child a steaming, freshly cooked bowl of khichdi, a simple dish of lentils and rice. The boy was starving. Unable to wait, he plunged his fingers directly into the deepest central mound of the hot dish to get the biggest bite possible. He immediately recoiled, crying out in pain as the searing heat of the rice burned his hand. From the shadows, the general watched the boy's hand shake. The child had charged into the heat with the same blind momentum that had just destroyed the general's army. The mother gently stopped her crying son. She told him to leave the middle alone and instead pull his food only from the outer edges of the bowl. Look at this heat map. The edges are exposed to ambient air and cool rapidly, breaking the heat source into manageable pieces. By methodically working around the rim, he cleared the edges, allowing the center to naturally cool. From his seat in the corner, the general watched the steam rise from the edges of the bowl. He looked at the circular pattern of the meal, then closed his eyes and saw the borders of the kingdom he had just lost. The center of the bowl held the most heat because it had the most mass. By working the perimeter, the boy was systematically reducing the temperature of the entire dish, one spoonful at a time. The general returned to his king. He spoke of his failure not as a lack of strength, but as a lack of perspective, and proposed a new campaign built on the logic of the peasant's bowl. 1 month later, the army marched across the border again. This time, they completely ignored the central palace. Instead, they moved slowly, systematically securing the isolated border villages one by one. Securing the perimeter first reversed the original trap. Without control of the borders, the dictator's central palace was entirely cut off from incoming supplies, communications, and military reinforcements. The strategy worked flawlessly. The entire country was secured with minimal conflict. The dictator was imprisoned for life, and peace was fully restored. The most profound and lasting victories do not come from dramatic, head-on clashes. They are achieved through the quiet, humble patience of resolving challenges from the outside in.